Welcome to episode 8 of Soul Care with Stevie Boy. We're in the book of Philippians finally, and we're just making a snail's pace, sometimes word by word, through what Paul wrote to his friends in the church at Philippi. We're still in the first chapter, and last episode we talked about what I think is a very empowering concept Paul writes about in verse 6, where he says, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. What an amazing idea to me, that God is not, he's not in the least bit worried. He is not wondering if you're going to make it. He's not wondering if his grace is enough to pull you through. The thing is, he will finish what he has started in us. Now, quickly, a couple of things Paul didn't say. Paul didn't say, you be finished, you be sure and finish what God has started in you. And there are a lot of people in a lot of churches that I fear have been raised to believe that God's keeping score. And he is, he saved you, and he gave you everything you need, and now work harder because you gotta finish what he started. I'm sorry. Well, no, wait, I'm not sorry. That's absolutely not what Paul was saying. What he was saying is God started it in you, and he will finish what he started. So then he goes on to say in verse 7, it is right for me to feel this way about all of you, since I have you in my heart. And whether I'm in chains or defending and confirming the gospel, all of you share in God's grace with me. God can testify how I long for all of you with the affection of Christ Jesus. I love this idea, and I know what it's like to have worked with a group of people in God's family in a located church, and then to move on and be geographically separated from them and yet have them deeply in your heart, to pray for and hope for and look forward to all the good that is yet to be done in and through them. And Paul said, it's right for me to feel this way. He had them in his heart. Just a real quick pause. Who have you got in your heart that way? I think every Christian should have and does have, and maybe you don't even know you have, those kinds of people in your heart. And it's worth occasionally pausing and going through that list of people. I think I talked about this before, where thinking about those who have had that kind of profound influence in your life, who are in your heart, and praying prayers of thanksgiving and petition for provision for them. It only makes sense. And Paul said, it's right for me to feel this way. And then I love, beginning in verse 9, he said, here's my prayer, which is a very interesting thing, where he didn't say, well, you're in my heart and I'm praying for you all the time. He said, this is the prayer that I'm praying for you. Now, if you got your New Testament open, and oh, by the way, you can get it on your smartphone, even a not very smart smartphone, you can get the YouVersion of the Bible. I just so encourage you to do that. Well, anyway, here we are in Philippians 1, beginning in verse 9. And this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God. This is worth pulling apart very nearly word for word, so we get the meaning of all that is there. That your love may abound more and more. Another way to say that is that your love would get bigger and bigger, deeper and deeper. I would think during this coronavirus crisis, that as the love of God somehow becomes more and more manifest in us, the people of God, that it would make connecting with God even more attractive than it's ever been before. I know a lot of people who came to Christ as adults from very difficult backgrounds and experiences and horrible family lives and even addiction. And one of the things that they all have in common is that they were attracted to Jesus by the love of Jesus's people. I don't know anybody that got attracted to Jesus by all the codes and rules that churches have. I don't know anybody that got attracted to Jesus by how well dressed all the people at congregation A were on Sunday morning because they're bringing their best for Jesus. I do know this. There are gazillions of people who came to Jesus because some Christian loved them. Now, you have to balance that love is not the only thing, but it is. I don't think it's accidental that Paul started there. He didn't start. He could have started. Look at what his second thing is. He said that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight. He could have started there. I want your knowledge and depth of insight to grow more and more so that your love may grow as well. And that's not what he said. He flipped that on his head. Now think about this. In a Greek culture, a very Greek influenced culture, for the Greek, the mind was the big deal, the most important thing. The knowledge that you had gathered, insight that you had, that was the most important thing. Paul makes this strong implication here. No, it's not. Your knowledge is of value. And we want you to have knowledge and insight. We want you to have knowledge and depth of insight, but not at the expense of love. Now, here's the other thing. We don't want you to have love at the expense of knowledge and depth of insight. We want those two things to be together. I wonder, sometimes people say, well, what's more important, what I think or what I feel? And okay, first of all, that's not, I don't think you really mean what that question says, because if you think deeply about it, you're, number one, what you think and what you feel are not two dramatically separate things. They're deeply connected. Second thing is, that's not what Paul's saying. He's saying love, that your love may abound more and more. That it will, to abound means essentially more than you need. Hey, I kind of like the idea of having more love than I need. And you know what happens when you have more love than you need? It splashes out on everybody around you. It's like, you know, have you ever gone to the coffee shop and they filled your cup? They were in a hurry and they filled your cup all the way to the top, and you just can't even get back to the table without some of it sloshing and spilling out. Well, that's the concept of this love that abounds more and more. You've got more than you need, and it's going to splash over. So, but here's the thing. Love here is not an emotion. Love is both a noun and a verb. Love is an act of your will. When you love someone or something, well, let me just ask you this. How do you know I love my wife? Because I talk about my feelings, I do. But if you're around me, I know one of the ways that you'll know whether I love my wife as much as I tell you I do, and that is, how do I treat her? What do my actions tell you? So you don't separate the feeling from the will when it comes to love. That'd be a mistake. So is this the will to love, or is it knowledge and depth of insight that are more important? Well, I can answer that question by asking you another one. With a pair of scissors, which blade is more important? Well, the answer is pretty clear. I mean, think about it. If you only have one blade, you don't have scissors, you have a letter opener. Both of them are equally important. I heard a guy say one time, that's like asking which wing of the airplane is more important. If there is one that's more important than the other, I don't know what it would be. All I know is I don't want to get in a plane with only one wing. So love abounding more and more, and that your knowledge and depth of insight, these things would come together. Your willful choosing to love and the feelings that are a part of that. It's not like one or the other, it's both and abounding. And secondly, your knowledge and depth of insight keeps growing. I think I'm wired at this point in my life. I don't know that I was always wired this way, but I am wired kind of on the knowledge and insight side of things. I still feel deeply. I cry fairly easily. I have strong emotions, but I've learned over time that it's like my emotions are an elephant, and my will and intellect, my mind, is the rider of the elephant. And if I just let the elephant go anywhere it wants to go, it might do something good, but it might just bulldoze a hut. So they need to both be at work together. But he says, and more, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight. Okay, I know I'm making a lot out of this, but I'm going to keep going there. Where does insight come from? Insight comes from when you have ingested knowledge. Insight is an aspect, I believe, of wisdom. Insight is knowing, what do I do about what I know? That, my friends, is one of the reasons why the church is either moving forward or is stuck and stagnant. Either people are gaining insight as well as knowledge, and they're answering the question, so what do I do about this? Or they're just getting fat with all this good knowledge. I can tell you all the books of the Old and New Testaments, and I can tell you most of the minor prophets, and I can on and on and on with all these little bits of information and knowledge. Hey, listen, life is not a Jeopardy game. Life is about what do you do about what you know. And that's what insight is. And then he says, so that you may be able to discern what is best. Ding, ding, ding. See, if I just only have knowledge, I don't have insight. And it isn't just that Paul said insight, depth of insight. I take that to mean an insight that is growing deeper and richer, so that you may be able to discern what is best. When you get all this knowledge and then you have insight into what do I do with this knowledge? What do I do about what I know? So that you may be able to discern what is best. There's often only a subtle difference between what is good and what is best. But there are times when the difference between what is good and what is best is a Grand Canyon of difference. In my own life, there have been times when I settled for good because I was just too lazy to go for the best. Now, you probably haven't ever done that, but you might have a family member who did. Hey, don't accuse anybody of this unless you're looking into the mirror of your own life. When you work with your objective and your goal for this knowledge, love, knowledge, and insight is that you would be able to discern what is best. There are times that you have to think deeply in order to discover what is best and may be pure and blameless. That's an interesting thing. See, It isn't necessarily just about, okay, I want to come up with as many scenarios that will be good for everybody. And if I have to bend the rules a little bit, well, maybe that, it's the point is I'm going for the best. Paul says, when you stack these layers, you've got love, you have knowledge, you have depth of insight, you have discernment, so you may discern what is best. And then he is on to this character quality of purity and blamelessness. And be pure and blameless for the day of Christ. Now, it would be easy to make more of this than is there, but I'm going to take the risk. When I stand before Jesus, I really don't think he's going to be weighing things on a scale and saying, okay, so how much money did you give? How many sermons did you preach? How many people did you baptize? How many times did you X, Y, or Z? Have you been on a mission trip? Have you whatever? I think he's going to look into my own heart. Is my heart pure and blameless because of his grace at work redeeming me? That's a lot to bite off and chew, but I've already burned up 16 minutes and 20 seconds, and I yesterday made a commitment to myself I was going to be under 15 minutes from here on. Sorry. Hey, I'll work on doing better, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.